Welcome once again to the J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with ink, pen and ink. So have your kneaded eraser, a number 2 or an HB pencil handy, and any type of ink that you would like to use. But make sure that it's archival, that it's permanent, that it's black, and a smooth ink. And let's start doing some ink drawing. So we're going to first start out with our number 2 pencil because it's easily erased. And a good composition comes close to or touches 3 of the 4 sides. So as I'm looking through my composition, I'm looking through my scrap, my reference, I think to myself, almost half my paper is going to be water. So all that reflection and stuff that's down in there, it's all going to be water. So I may want to just come in and draw a line and say, okay, that's where I want the base. This is where I want my water to start. And just about right in the middle of the page, kind of comes like this. And then you've got these trees and stuff in there. I like those trees coming into it. So I might do a little arch. I'm not sure I don't know if I like this tree coming straight up like that. So I might just kind of cut it off and arch it a little bit. This should be my highest point. This is kind of a triangular format. So if we make this tree a little bit shorter over here, it's going to look a little more well composed, a little more beautiful. So there's the bridge, and then I've got, of course, I've got these circles here that create the arches and the reflection of it there. And again, these are just guides. Be aware that these are just guides. We can change them, we can alter them. The cool thing about buildings too is there's no pressure here. There, you know, if it's not exactly right, that's not a big deal. I want that point of the top of that building to almost come right to the top. Not quite. And then that little bit of that house might be cut off a little bit over there. So there's my triangle for that house. It's not quite that high. Notice that everything on the bottom is sloping up. And then as you get towards the middle, it kind of levels itself out. This is called linear perspective. And the viewer, where the viewer is, everything is going to be level. So you can figure out how high that camera was by where the level parts of our angles are. Everything in the bottom is going to angle down a little bit. Or everything at the top is going to angle down a little bit. So you can kind of figure out where things are going to be. There's a little part of a house that's stuck in the middle there. Kind of fun. One place that I lived at in Germany, I lived in a house that was built in 1364. It was amazing to live in a little place like that. When you get everything kind of sketched in, kind of where you want it to be, then you can go into the bottom there, and just like you did the arches here, you can take your building and bring it straight down. You know, anything else, you can bring those straight down and just kind of block them in. Because that's all going to be reflection. All it is a guide, just helping us figure out where everything goes. If you want your windows to line up, you kind of want to do the same thing, but you could just do guidelines. Here's a little guideline that says the top of my windows are going to go there. The bottoms are going to go about right in there. These are just guidelines. Just guidelines. Because I'll show you how to do the windows. They're not really rectangles. You're just going to draw the shadows. Same thing with the roof. This little split timber work that's on there, it's beautiful, but it's there for structural purposes. They say that these buildings are so redundantly built that you could safely remove about a third of them and the building would still be strong. So that's kind of fun. And if you don't get them all in, that's fine too. I like this little tree that's in here too. I might put a little bit of that tree in there, because then the whole buildings are kind of framed between these trees. And even the trees that are kind of in the background, I might put those in. Although I don't like it so linear like this, so I may kind of round it out a little bit more. Like that. I'm going to start with the tower, kind of get the tower in there and work my way down and then out either way. So the first thing I want to do though is I just want to show you some things that you can do when you're doing buildings. And they're a lot of fun because there's so much you can leave out. You know, of course, all the light stuff, all this white stuff, you're going to leave all that out. Just do the split beam timber work here in the middle. But even some of the brick and the rock and things like that you can leave out. And the windows, look how light those windows are up there. A lot of that you can leave out. Remember, we're trying to kind of figure out what we don't have to draw, what not to draw. And so I'm going to just zoom into this and just start with the top of this building here. And of course, as you look through it, you're like, Mr. Lowe, your drawing's not very good here. And you're right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I don't want to draw everything in there. So I'm going to just kind of look at that and say, okay, what can I leave out? What can I not draw? So as I zoom into this, all these little shadows that are under the eaves, I've got to draw those. And even the shadows under these windows, I'm going to draw those. But some of those edges get lost. So why draw them in? Just don't draw them in. So rather than draw a line around everything, I'm just going to start out. I'm going to start with the eaves, which are the underneath side of the roof. I'm just do a little line there. So just start with those little shapes. And then I'm just going to hatch through them. Zigzag, zig, 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 zig. And it doesn't really matter which direction you go. You can go either direction. You can even do little circles if you wanted to. I'm just going to hatch through that. The roof line itself, yeah, you need somebody to say, well, there's a roof line up there. But what would happen if you didn't draw your line around it first? What would happen if you just took it and went side to side with little dots and dashes? Like this. And just so thin, barely touching the surface, so your pen kind of skips along and doesn't get everything in there. Now, this side is very light, where this side is a little darker. So maybe I'm going to have a little bit more on that side. And you have those little dormer windows that kind of poke out at the top. You can put those in, a little triangle there, a little darkness there, and that's it. You don't really need much more. There's a little window. And there's another one on the other side. If I continue up through here and drop that down, there's one over here. And again, it's just this little zigzaggy darkness, little triangle. That's it. You don't need any more. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and I can see where my pencil was, and I can come in there and go, oh, okay, what if I just started out here and did some little dots and dashes? I'm going to go a little bit slower, and that's going to make my pen come off the page a little bit more. And I have a tendency to shake when I draw. I've since learned that lots of people shake when they draw. So if you're a shaker like I am,
you just kind of use this to your advantage. You just put your pen down, you just do a little shake. Then this edge here, I'm going to just clean up that edge a little bit because it's not quite even. I'm just going to come into it and just clean up that edge. Little dots, little dashes, whatever. And any place else you feel like you need to clean it up a little bit. But don't draw a line around things. Just let it go. Now, if we get rid of my graphite, all that penciled part that I've got in there, that's it. That's the roof. Piece of cake. Same thing with the rock and everything. Instead of drawing a line down here and then filling it in, what if we say, well, I can see where my building's going to start and stop. What if I just do these little dashes starting with that edge, and I'm going towards the direction that the building is? Some of these down here are a lot thicker. What if I did like little meandering rectangles and just did this? This is called meandering, by the way. You kind of do these little ups and downs, but barely touch your surface and allow your pen to not do full lines. They're just kind of little broken edges. And this is called meandering. And you just you're thinking rectangles, but you can even do that from the other side coming in. So that whole surface is going to be done that way. This way is really light up here. You may not hardly even want to do much of anything up there. Maybe a few little dots and dashes. Now, let me show you the windows. These windows are so easy. This is why I love these old houses, because the windows are set deep. I can just come in and say, okay, there's a little window about right in here. I'm going to do this upside down L or a 7 or whatever you want to call it, like that. And then just this little triangle. I'm just going to hatch through the triangle right there. Hatch, 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 hatch. And a couple little dots. And there's your window. Was that just easy? And it looks like it goes in. And all your windows are going to be fairly similar. Some of these other windows where the glass is reflecting, you might not even see that hardly at all. So you may just want to do a little shadow there, maybe a little dot and dash over here, a couple little dots and dashes on the side, and there's your window. The middle one is just about the same. Little dots and dashes. It's amazing what a dot will do. And that's really it. That's all you need in there. If you needed more, you could always come back in later and add a few more later. Usually right below an opening, it's going to be a little darker because water kind of collects and drips down in there and it gets a little darker. And so right under the window, sometimes you can get a little darkness in there. So just a couple little dots and dashes. But that texture that you're getting there with the dots, it's all you need. The little dots, these little rectangles that are a little darker, if you wanted to hatch through them and say, well, there's a brick there, there's a little more brick over here, some rock over there. Little window below that, maybe about right in there. There's my triangle. There's my window. These little windows might be arrow loops. You know what an arrow loop is? It's a little slit in the wall where they would shoot out of. And just a couple little dots and dashes, whatever you feel like you need. Here's my edge. Little dots and dashes that start where your edge is. And if you look at it and you get rid of your graphite like this, and you think to yourself, oh, that's too much, just put a little dot in the middle or a little dash or something. You can even clean up that edge if you want it really sharp. You just put a couple little dots there to clean that up. Now you have a really sharp, nice edge. If you drew a line there, you'd be stuck with it. And really, that's about it. So for the rest of this tower, I'm just going to do some little meandering through it, dots and dashes, maybe a few little hatched lines through there, just to say, look, there's some brick over here. I know where my edge is, so I'm just going to meander through that. I can even see where the edge of my building is going to be. I don't know exactly, and so I can just stop where I think that edge of that building is going to be. Where that shadow is that comes off of there, I can just hatch through that too. I can just come through and go, okay, there's a little shadow coming down there. I'm just going to hatch through that very quickly and barely touching the surface. There's that shadow. And then I can hatch through that. And it looks like a little shadow. Some of those little brick or rock along the edge, probably made out of a volcanic rock, basalt or something. So they're going to be a little darker. You can come in and just hatch through those. Little dots or dashes, just to make them a little thicker, a little darker right there. Same thing coming down the other way, but your little sevens are the opposite way. One thing you can do too is where that tree is, that tree defines that edge. So rather than draw a line down there, what if I were to take and just go through and say, well, I see there's a tree there. It's fairly dark. What if I just kind of do something like this? Just come down and say, well, I can see where that edge is going to be. And then I can just do my little tree. Let me show you how to do trees. They're so easy. M's and U's. So I'm going to do little tiny M's, and some of them are just kind of floating out there. You don't even have to have them attached to anything. Just have them floating out there. Everybody understands they're shadows. These are leaves. So I'm just doing these little M's, and then as I get towards the bottom, I may want to do some little U shapes like this, so that some of those leaves look like they're going down and some look like they're coming up. And you just kind of keep going through there. You can do little dots and dashes too, just little dots to just say, this is where the edge of that building is going to be. Maybe it guides you a little bit. And then there's your tree, just little areas hanging out there, M's and U's. If there are branches in there, you could even add little branches that kind of come up. I don't know that I see too many branches in there. So you may or may not want them in there. It's up to you. I'm going to continue on with the windows and this doorway over there. These little, that 7, a little triangle in there of darkness. And a little dot and a dash, and that's it. That's the window. And if you want to leave that broken edge, go ahead and leave it. Your viewer understands that that's connected. But if you think, I need a little dot or a little dash or something, just do one in the middle. I'm going to get rid of my graphite there. This is one of the most satisfying things, is to get rid of that graphite. And our tree's looking okay. You can always come back into it, like I say, and add a few more little dark areas. You don't want it all the same. So little dots and dashes, or just more little U's or M's. Everything here is going to do that same technique. The only difference is then the split timber work that's over here. It might be a little different, but you still start out with the eaves of your building. So if you wanted to, you could start out with a little edge, a little line, little dots and dashes to just say it's a little darker right there. And then the other side, you can see more of it because that eave sticks out a little bit. You can do a double edge there. And then hatch through that. And it's not extremely dark, so you don't have to be as close with your line. But the windows are going to be about the same. I'm going to start out, I'm just going to do this little split timber work. Instead of doing line, I'm just going to do little dots and dashes or hatches, because it's not straight. It's not as even as it looks. These windows are a little darker, so you could just hatch through them in the shape of a rectangle. You can leave little spots open. Nothing wrong with that. Those lower windows, they have a little dark rim around them. I suppose you can do little dots and dashes around it if you wanted to. Little rectangle shapes. Just going to scribble in some areas of shadow that come down that little awning there. And it's quite dark under there. And throw that in. Anything that you can see as shadow, just scribble it in. Here's something, this roof line on this little squished building that's in between. Just leave it out. Just do the brick in between. And the little roof line, just leave it out. You can put little dots and dashes in there. But your viewer will figure that out. They'll pick it up. And as an artist, you'll kind of come in and go, yeah, I can see where that little roof line would be. So I'm just leaving out the roof line where the roof is, and then I'm just going to go back in and do the texture of the tree. And that will define all that area. Here's the roof line, and again, I'm just doing little textures. There's little tiles on this roof, and they're kind of linear. They go this way. So I can just kind of guess where that roof is going to go. And I just throw in these little linear tile-like marks there. Not sure what that thing is sticking up. I think it might be just a pipe. You might have a bathroom or something under there, and that's an air vent. You don't have to know what it is that you're drawing even. So that roof line there, I've just left it out completely. All I've done is just added a couple little shapes. I'm not even sure what they are. Just ever so lightly. Just let your pen skip across the surface. If it's something light, just leave it out. So over on this other side is that other tree. We can go ahead and put that tree in there too. I may even want to make it just a little closer to it so that this isn't quite as long. That's okay. Anytime you have an edge, just think about it. I'm not going to draw a line. I'm just going to do texture. Texture, texture, texture. And if you're off a little bit, that's okay. Little window. Start out with a little shape, a little L or a 7, depending on where the light's coming from. In this case, it's above, and so we're doing these little upside down L's. And just hatch through it. Sometimes all you need is a dot. If there's glass in it, usually the glass reflects the light. And the bridge is this meandering shaped stuff too. And you can take your pencil and draw your arch in, then just go along. There's the shape of the arch. Right behind that, it's fairly dark. So wherever those trees are, you can just scribble through that. Scribble, scribble, scribble. And then a few little M's and U's to just say, oh, there's something behind it there. I'm getting really excited to show you how to draw water because it's so easy. So when you get ready to do the shines and everything in the water, just remember water is level. It is all very horizontal. And so I'm just going to do the shadows underneath, but I'm just going to go back and forth in kind of a meandering kind of just back and forth. And there's the shine. And if you do it all back and forth, then you've got water. Here's some other areas back and forth, little meandering. And don't feel like you need to do very much there, but just back and forth, almost this little zigzaggy, but try to stay very linear, very horizontal. So here's the building. And so I'm just going to go back and forth. And where the edge of the building is, I'm just going to stop, come back, stop, 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 stop. And those little edges then become the shine of the building. And that's really all water is. It's so easy. You can always come back into and do more if you want to. But that's water. Especially calm water. If it's a little agitated water, if it's like in a river or something, sometimes you just leave out the light areas. But here we're doing our shines and our reflections. And so just remember to keep going back and forth. It's got to be very linear. You know, it looks kind of like I'm trying to put details in, but I'm really not. I'm just scribbling. Just little dots and dashes, and you just put them wherever you feel like you need them to be. Here's the top of that roof. Just little hatched lines through it, and you got it. I mean, I didn't even draw the roof really. I just let it go. It's light. If you feel like you need more, you can always come back and add a few more little dots and dashes. Here's the reflection of that tree. Again, it's just back and forth, a little meandering, just a little darker. You got it. Here's the building. When you get to that point, you think, okay, I've got all the information I really need. Get rid of that graphite. All that graphite does is make it muddy. It's so much nicer when you get rid of that graphite. There's probably a bunch more that we could do here, but I think we did all right. Make sure you sign this. Good place to sign it is right down there, kind of where the reflection of that tree would be if you had a tree down in there. So right down in there somewhere is a good place to sign it. I hope you had fun. Hope you learned something. And I hope y'all have a lovely day.